Hello there, Kev P here. According to my memories of early Jim Carrey films, he was a comedy genius who could do no wrong. So when I found out that an old friend of mine who grew up in the UK also had a childhood Carrey crush, we decided to do a marathon of some of these films for a nostalgia trip. I had mixed feelings, to say the least. So, what was it then? What was it about this man that we found so endearing as children? What was it about this man that adults in the 90s also found endearing enough that they paid real money to go to the cinema and see his box office hit films? And what was it that made him work for us as adults in this day and age only in certain instances? Being the analytically minded people we are, we decided to apply our logic and reasoning skills to a task that really didn't require them and crack the Carrey conundrum over a series of viewings of early Jim Carrey comedies. Our goals for each film: 1. To analyze and understand why Jim Carrey had such a profound effect on our childhoods, and 2. To figure out what makes early Jim work for us as adults and what makes him cringeworthy. Welcome to what I lovingly dub the Jim Carreython. I can only hope its contents give you some much needed closure about your own childhood Jim Carrey obsession. And of course, I encourage you to give your own insights and thoughts about the place of his films, both in the 90s and in 2019. Well,
this won't hurt a bit. At least I don't think it will.
Today's film marks review number 5 of my Jim Carreython, so we're going to do something a little different after I finish reviewing this one, and look back on our progress so far in this Jim Carrey journey. Don't touch that dial. Batman Forever, 1995. Although Batman Forever holds a special place in my heart, being the film that introduced me to Jim Carrey as a child, it's poo-pooed by many of the Batman series' hardcore fans, together with its sequel, Batman and Robin. Indeed, in the grand scheme of things, it's widely believed to have marked the beginning of the end of Batman's first gritty reboot, with director Joel Schumacher attempting to bring the edgy Tim Burton's Batman back down to a more family-friendly level. And it worked, apparently. For a younger me, it was a friendlier introduction to a classic superhero, and Jim Carrey's Riddler was a huge part of that. I was made to see the film in the cinema with my class one day, and I surprised myself by enjoying it so much that I went on to watch it in the cinema a further 2 times. As an aside, reading some of the negative reviews for the film now, I can't help but feel that some of the reasoning behind the bad press was strictly due to straight men being uncomfortable with looking at men's bodies. Joel Schumacher's Batman is notorious in this regard. Of this film, Variety's Brian Lowry remarked, "One does have to question the logic behind adding nipples to the hard rubber batsuit. One also has to question the logic behind dressing up as a bat at all, or the existence of supervillains, or Catwoman using a whip as a weapon, but hey, I'm just a fake Batman fan." And critic Mick LaSalle felt the need to point out in his review that a shot of Kilmer's rubber buns at one point is guaranteed to bring squeals from the audience, as if that's a bad thing. If one shot of a man being shown in a slightly sexualized manner in an entire film is cause enough to be worth an explicit mention in a review, then Hollywood really is in a sorry state for all people who are attracted to men. I weep. So what do I remember from this game-changing, for me, film? Well, my crush on Jim Carrey's character pre-Riddler, in particular his luscious hair, and putting up with Batman to enjoy Jim. The film was pretty boring otherwise, and for someone who strictly watched cartoons only, his comic live-action performance was something different and refreshing to me. Outside of that, not much really. I certainly didn't remember his character's stupid name, Edward Nigma, although I understand that this isn't anyone's fault but the creator of the character, so I'll excuse the film for this particular travesty. As a kid, I was never that interested in superheroes and found the darkness of Batman really boring and serious. In fact, 20 years later, I've been going through some of the grimdark Batman games on streams, specifically because my poor form playing video games makes such a great contrast with how seriously modern Batman takes itself as a concept.
You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you. Yes, put your ear in my face. My bat face.
As a child, if I were to be made to watch a live-action film, I wanted to laugh, and I finally got that with the Riddler in Batman Forever. So let's have a look at the plot of the film, shall we? Is there a plot? Okay, so basically this villain called Two-Face is doing naughty things to provoke Batman. Meanwhile, Edward Nigma is a researcher at Wayne Enterprises who's obsessed with Bruce Wayne, Batman's alter ego.
Oh my god, it's him?
He's been working on a device that can project television into a person's brain and tries to plug it to Wayne, but is rejected because Wayne believes it's too similar to mind manipulation to be ethically sound. This apparently is enough to make Nigma snap, and he instead joins forces with Two-Face as the Riddler, and uses the brainwave device to steal Gotham's confidential information, with Two-Face hoping to acquire Batman's secret identity in the process. There's some other subplot stuff in there, like the birth of Robin and a psychiatrist with a bizarre obsession with Batman, but none of it really matters in the end, because after all, that's not why we're here, is it? Jim's role in the film is quite small compared with the Jim headliner films we've seen so far, and when he does appear, he's often sidelining with Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. I can't say that's a bad thing. In fact, it probably saved him. As cute as he is with that hair, Jim's performance as Edward Nygma prior to becoming the Riddler is kind of annoying, and him doing his usual comic shtick in the serious setting of Wayne Enterprises just seems stupid. I'm sure when I was small, his comedic stylings helped me to survive the rest of the boring film, but viewed in the context of the film's story, it doesn't make any sense for Edward Nygma to behave the way he does. Even an archetypal mad scientist wouldn't act as melodramatically as Nygma with such little reaction from their co-workers. It was also kind of uncomfortable to have pre-Riddler Nygma act as evil as the Riddler, albeit without a costume. There's a gruesome scene where, spoiler alert, pre-Rob and Dick Grayson's entire acrobat family is murdered by Two-Face during a circus performance. And while watching the live broadcast of this murder, Nygma's cackling gleefully and eating popcorn. Without a cheesy costume, Nygma's behavior seems too dark, even for Gotham. Thankfully, given Nygma's small presence in the film, these scenes are not common enough to be completely distracting, and once Nygma dons the costume, his violence magically becomes much more palatable through the veneer of comic superhero violence. Indeed, the direction of the criminal capers of Two-Face and his pal the Riddler comes across as very maskish, complete with ridiculous props, and it makes you wonder whether this was one reason why Jim was chosen for the role of the Riddler in the first place. Riddler's character works well in a team with Two-Face, and just like when I was younger, he was the highlight of the film for me, which, as it turns out, was largely forgettable. As hard as Schumacher tried to camp up the franchise, it still felt like it was taking itself way more seriously than warranted, especially any scenes involving Batman himself. Remember that this is a film about an adult man who dresses up like a bat. Speaking of which, Val Kilmer's acting is so wooden in this movie that by the end of it my friend and I were referring to his character as Bruce Wayne. I also had trouble keeping up with the plot in general, particularly during the third act, not because it was so complex, but because I found myself tuning out and losing focus. We were never entirely sure what the Riddler's overall plan or motives were. To be fair, in the scene where he tracks down Two-Face to team up with him, he explicitly details his goals, as well as how he found Two-Face's secret lair. But the only thing I can remember about any of this exposition is the shrill line, "Does anybody else feel like a fried egg?" which isn't particularly helpful. I know it was something about draining people's intelligence while they watch television, but beyond that all I have is fried egg. Thanks, Jim. Viewed as a character piece on the Riddler, Jim's role is too small, but when he is in the costume is when the movie shines the most. I say costume, but there were multiple, and the last one really shows you how body confident Jim was in those days. Yep, even 90s fashion can't explain this. Overall, I'd agree with my childhood self. Batman Forever is boring, and would be unremarkable if it weren't for Jim saving the day and making it silly. I see some of the good parts of the mask in his portrayal of the Riddler, and once he's actually in the costume, he stands out in his almost homoerotic double act with Two-Face. It's just unfortunate that his performance is too little, too loud. So rather than gelling and being a light in the darkness, when seen as a whole, the film is just disjointed and somewhat awkward. Is bad direction to blame in this instance? The Carrey conundrum continues. My rating, 2 green leotards out of 5. So, now that we've gotten through that confusing mess, we're now 5 early Jim Carrey films down the line. Hooray! I suppose this is enough data to notice some trends for the goals we set for ourselves at the beginning of this project. 1. To analyse and understand why Jim Carrey had such a profound effect on our childhoods, and 2. To figure out what makes early Jim work for us as adults and what makes him cringeworthy. So let's begin by looking at the best and worst films so far. The winner so far. The Mask, 1994. The Mask was even better to watch as an adult. The Tex Avery pastiche was on point, something that I simply did not have the insight to understand as a child. There's so much about the film to love besides Jim Carrey, but that's not even the reason why this film stands out so much. As good as it was, the film arguably would not have hit the marks that it did without Jim Carrey's larger-than-life performance. The film and Jim were made for each other, with each other. This is the world in which early Jim belongs. The loser so far, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, 1994. There's no other film from this Jim Carreython so far where every moment that I remember fills me with revulsion. It's not just realizing the horrific sexism and misogyny spread liberally throughout the film. Those are almost the least of my concerns. No, what bothers me the most about this film is his character acting the way that he does, with the delivery that he has, but existing in the real world with real people who nevertheless seem relatively okay with him acting this way.
This is not the time, Mace. If Einhorn come down here and see me talking to you or your ass, I'm history.
To me, that just magnifies how horrifically, revoltingly annoying he is. Having said that, looking for an animated GIF from the movie yielded some great results that could be applicable to many situations, especially on social media. Maybe Ace Ventura's true calling was in memes? Yeah, fuck you, Ace. If we're looking at the first goal, to understand why 90s children like my friend and I were so obsessed with Jim Carrey, that's starting to make more sense with each film. Generally speaking, taking Jim's funny actions away from any kind of social context, they can be quite funny. Of course his cartoon-like manner is going to delight children raised on cartoons. What I am beginning to question more and more, however, is how adults of the same era contributed so much to his popularity. At the moment, I still can't see how anyone who has graduated from puberty would find a film like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective bearable. Maybe goal 1 is answered, but has spawned a new goal. 1B, to analyze and understand why early Jim Carrey comedy was also a box office magnet among the adult demographic in his time. With regards to our second goal, to know what makes Jim hit and what makes him miss in 2019, I do feel as though me and my friend are slowly stumbling our way towards an answer. Here's a simple summary of our basic thoughts about the Jim Carrey code so far. Is the film set in the real world? No. Jim can probably work? Yes. Do people react realistically to Jim's bizarre behavior? No. Jim's probably annoying? Yes. Jim can probably work. We haven't quite cracked it yet, though. The big question now is, will we have an answer by the time we run out of movies? Did you see Batman Forever when it first came out? What were your thoughts? Has your opinion changed with the passing of time? Did Jim Carrey as the Riddler work for you? Allow me to solicit your internet opinion in the comments. Thanks as always for watching, and stay tuned for the next exciting installment in the Jim Carreython, where we'll revisit Jim's very COES portrayal of a lawyer in Liar Liar. See you then! Well, I sure hope I don't fuck up now, because then I'll just have to start from the beginning again, and then you'll just be watching this all stream. Shit! 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 Do I have to run? Do I have to run? I wanna... Ah! Oh god! I don't like it. I don't like it. Is he after me? Is he after me? I don't want to turn and find out. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Oh, there's my special bat thing. Wait. Wait. What? Did I...